Hey, Mike.
Hey, hey Joe, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, really well.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you as well.
Where are you located?
Just outside Milwaukee, a little town called West Bend.
Okay, excellent. I'm here in Kansas City, Missouri.
I haven't made it to Kansas City, but I have a good friend from college who's down there. So he's from up here, but he's stayed down there, and as well as you have a famous Kansas City Royal in Joe Randa, who was
Yeah.
a schoolmate of mine. So
Oh, is that right? Yeah, Joe
yeah,
was he was a fan favorite here for
he
sure.
was the Joker. I love that
Yeah.
nickname they gave him. I just remember him in high school. He had we they were playing an inferior team, and the pitcher they were facing was just awful, and he just gave us that Joker grin.
Yeah.
Went to the plate and crushed a home run, and it was just like I love that. So
There's some guys that are just built for that, you know?
yeah, and he just wherever he went, he went to Indian Hills, and then he went to Tennessee for a year, and then the Royals drafted him, and he was third or fourth. He wasn't a top round pick. They had a top pick that Joe went on to that year to become the minor league player of the year, and then just went on from there. I think he had a
Yeah.
13-year career, so very
Yeah.
very cool. So yeah, I
Yeah.
and I think there's always this kindred spirit between Milwaukee and Kansas City, just in terms of its size and
Yeah.
well, the underdog, shall we say? So
Absolutely. There's always that. And I just keep wondering what's going on with the Brewers. Like they always get up there. It's like the Twins. They're always right up there in the
yeah.
top, and then it just falls away and yeah.
So
So
I heard this crazy stat. The last so the last time, 8 times the Brewers have made the playoffs, 6 of those teams have gone on to win the World Series. So
yeah. Yeah.
so but I give them credit though for the fact that we're able to get just competing. I just think it's smoke and mirrors what the Brewers have been able to do, and I'm sad to see that Council is interviewing with the Mets, because right now
Oh,
he's out of a contract. So
oh.
he's a Milwaukee kid, and but I just think maybe he's yearning for to get over that hump, because he's just done
Yeah.
amazing things with I think between him and the David Stern, the well, he's now in New York, so even the new guy, I think we're under Stern for quite a few years, have done some amazing things with uh, middle of the road players. Now they've had some fantastic pitching, and that
Yeah.
gets them many places. So
Yeah.
anyway, Joe, how have you been?
Everything's great. I do got to tell you though, it was because of Milwaukee that we won that World Series. Ned Yost was from there. The
Oh yeah,
Zach Greinke trade brought in Lorenzo Kane
that's right,
and
right.
Escobar. So just so yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of good connections there. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think Ned got a bad rap in Milwaukee, but he was also, I think he's well respected, because he was on the '82 World Series team. He was the
That's right.
backup catcher to Ted Simmons, and but he also just came up through the ranks as well, and I think he's kind of like Council. He was able to do a lot with little, I think,
Yeah.
is the best way to
Yeah.
describe that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's
That's
exciting.
yeah.
I have a good college friend who's down in Indianapolis, and he somehow is a Kansas City Royal fan, and so he was so stoked when the Kansas City Royals were doing so well
Yeah.
for those few years there. So
It was fun. It was exhausting, but it was fun. But yeah, yeah. I mean, when you're in a town, we went through that for 2 years in a row. It's like, and I never went to bed. I stayed up the whole time, and you just yeah, because that's
yeah,
what they were doing. That especially in 14, it was always late inning. It was always
oh
last
yeah,
minute. So,
yeah,
but at any rate, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our conversation with what we lived through for the last 3.5 years with the
mm,
pandemic. How did
yeah.
you get through it, and how did it change you?
So yeah, that's a great question. It's certainly something that uh, now I continued to work. I worked for a printing company, and we were doing medical labels, and so we were lumped into that essential piece. But I have a 16-year-old son, and he was in 8th grade. And that, the 8th grade's a weird year too, right?
Yeah.
It's that, hey, especially because he was at a private school from 4K all the way through to 8th grade, and at that point the kids just want to get out of there.
Yeah.
And then throw in the pandemic and what that did psychologically to kids.
Yeah.
My son especially, he had a hard time with it, and so he missed quite a bit of time in that first quarter of I want to say, was it 2020 getting into 2021. He really missed a lot of time there. So yeah, it had a dramatic effect, not only on we had, I would say, from a work standpoint, in the day job, it was good. I was also I had also launched in 2017 an e-commerce brand on Amazon, and like many in that space, 2021 was a crazy year. Has since come back down to earth, but it was some good and bad, right? I guess the best way to describe it is I think psychologically is probably the worst thing. Financially, I think it was a good for many people. I mean, and I shouldn't say that for some. I shouldn't say many, but for some, it was a good financial year. But psychologically, I think it's still with us.
Yeah, we're still dealing with it. So let's get to the essence of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade kids. It's career day. One of
Yep.
the kids looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Yeah. So my primary business is Prime Seller Solutions, where we help business owners in the e-commerce space really get clarification about what it is they do. So, I'm if you've ever heard of the book, The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, it's the idea that you want to get laser focused on finding that sweet spot, and think of it like finding a the award winning, you've seen those gigantic pumpkins, right? Those 1,600-pound pumpkins. Well, to grow those, and if we put that in the analogy of a business, to grow one of those, you have to make sure that you've got a great seed, you water, and then you get rid of all the other stuff that's going to take the nutrients from that pumpkin.
Yeah.
Right, so that you can grow that big one. And that's what we try to do with our clients, is to make sure that we get rid of all those other pumpkins that might take away that from growing that big pumpkin. And I think that's a great analogy, especially for third graders.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
Ooh, good question. That's a great question. I think back to when we used to be able to get the whether it was the J.C. Penney or the Sears catalog, maybe the Sears catalog, but I was just so infatuated with, and I think it was Emergency, was the old show on I think it was in reruns at that point, but getting that first aid kit. So something along the lines of EMT, but that went away pretty quickly.
Yeah, right. Well, I remember watching Chips, and I wanted to be a cop, and then that went away too.
Yeah,
When I started seeing like how it all went down and whatnot. So let me ask you this: all of these seeds of being an entrepreneur and helping people get to where they want to be started somewhere. Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what these seeds that were put into you to develop into who you are today.
That's a good question. So I can think back to, my parents were both teachers, but my dad was the vice principal at my high school. And so, but he also was, I'll say, entrepreneurial in his own right, in that he was a big woodworker. And so he would do a lot of refinishing for people that'd come, and they'd bring in, tables and chairs and whatnot, and he would refinish them. And he was a craftsman in that regard. So there was just something about that idea of taking something from a lower level and taking it to a higher level. Now he was just a one-man show, but I still love that idea. And I've been in operations management and leadership for 20 plus years in the printing industry. And I always had this interest in the smaller company. I did work for a bigger company for about 4 years, learned a lot of great things about systems and how important it was. I worked for a printing company that did, back in the day when we actually had magazines, it was a weekly publishing or printing plant. And that idea of everything better be in its place, otherwise you literally are going to pay for it. We printed Time, People, Sports Illustrated, and if you didn't have it on that pallet, on that truck at a specific time and that specific day, you paid Time Incorporated for if it didn't hit because it had to go to a mail center where it had all the timing and had to get to people's mailboxes on a specific day. So that was great. But I always gravitated back towards the smaller business where it felt like it could make a bit more of an impact. And
Yeah.
so even I can remember I'm a Ball State University grad, and my degree in graphic arts management and printing management, and that my senior thesis was on starting a business. And so that's always been with me. It's really not until the last 6 or 7 years where I've had the opportunity to venture into that and scratch that itch, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So who's been a hero for you, an inspiration for you in your life?
Oof. That's a good question. I've tended to look to I would say my dad was one. I would say those who've, I would say it's a conglomeration of many that have gone before me in terms of, I think of there's a few within the community here, a member of our church where he's passed away, but his name is Bill Holmquist, and he was within our church. Our church is about 1,600 members. They made a move from downtown to out then back in the late 50s when it was in the outskirts of West Bend. That he was a guy who was in everything. He was involved in church leadership. He was involved with the community band. He had his hand in a lot of things, and that connection, I think, is really what I've learned a lot, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, is so vital to just life.
Absolutely, it is.
And back to your point about COVID and the pandemic, it's just you just, and you can appreciate that so many Zoom calls you can do until you have to sit down with somebody across somebody and have a cup of coffee to be able to relate, right?
That's the thing about it, is the irony of that time was that we were all connected, but we weren't really in the same room. There's something different when you have a heartbeat in a room versus through technology. So let me ask you this: if you can meet one person on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Good question. Maybe it's just because I've been listening to his books, reading his books. John Acuff, you're familiar with the author John Acuff? I've exchanged a few things with him on Twitter years ago, debating whether or not Tom Brady or Bart Starr was a better Super Bowl quarterback. But he seems like a pretty fascinating guy. Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction, I'm looking right at his book right now. It seems like a pretty interesting guy as well, if you're familiar with the book Traction at all. Those two would come to mind right now, just because maybe they're top of mind.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You've mentioned sports. You're obviously a big sports fan. If you could go back in time and see one game, one sporting event, be in the stands, where are you going? What are you going to see?
Ooh, good question. There's I'm going to go pick on two. There's the Ice Bowl. There's the Ice Bowl. I just wouldn't want to be there.
Right.
Freezing. As a Packer fan, that's one of those special things. And maybe going to baseball, the '82 Brewers when they clinched the American League championship, because that was, as a kid, I was 11 at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was a 10 at the time. Yeah. So it was special. Special times. Those that come to my mind. Yeah.
How
about you? I'm going to ask you that question.
So it's funny. The actual anniversary was yesterday, and I saw it all over the place. I would be in the stands when Billy Buckner had that ball go through his leg. I was a massive Mets fan at the time, so I would have loved that. I would have went crazy. That game, I mean, Vin Scully was even speechless at the end of that game. Like, I know that the broadcasters let the crowd breathe, but I don't even know if he knew what to say.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of I can't believe what I just saw was at lefty for the Dodgers. What was
when Gibson hit that home run.
That was it. Yep.
In '88. Yep, that was it. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
stunned as well, and that
Yeah.
was such a long at bat. It was like he just kept
Oh yeah,
fouling.
falling off, falling off, falling
Yes.
off. Yeah.
So
I've had the pleasure of getting to many a Packer game,
yeah,
especially in the '90s when their Packers were back on the rise again with Brett Favre and Reggie White, and those were some pretty special. Even if they're just regular season games, I've been to a few playoff games as well. But yeah, there's just nothing quite like a good sporting event. And I'm a huge race fan as well. And having been to the Indy 500 now, more so open wheel Formula One. I'll watch NASCAR if it's on, but it's not my favorite.
yeah,
But I actually having been there when uh, the it was the bizarre year, but at 95, this is a year before not to bore the details with IndyCar and its split, but that time of IndyCar was pretty special because you had a lot of the big name drivers still in it.
yeah.
And yeah, so anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to one NASCAR event at one point. I've never really been to racing, and I've never been to an event that was that powerful. Like literally your whole body
Yeah.
shakes. I don't think people understand when you see in person, it's amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, and my first, I'd been to the Milwaukee Mile, and they get pretty 180, I think, is their top speed.
Yeah.
But being at Indy with one car on the track and coming up through the tunnel under the track, and it just blazes by at 240 some miles an hour. That was like, oh, I'm hooked.
That's crazy.
It
That is
is,
crazy.
yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is the motivation for you every day when you wake up and you run your business and you're helping people? What is your motivation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's family first. Providing as men, I think we're predisposed to, at least I hope we are, to providing for the best for our family. And then once the needs are taken care of, right? It's now jumping into those wants,
Yeah.
and I want to see whether it's an e-commerce seller or somebody just in any brick and mortar locally um, succeed. And so that's where my passion lies with really finding those sweet spots that people can operate in. I worked for a converting company. We think of it like taking big rolls of paper and making little rolls. And it was always, we made it a game in how we could, because we had a certain niche that we rolled with in terms of they didn't care about our price. They were much more interested in, hey, can I get it? And can I get this roll? Like, let's say a roll of tissue that they needed slit down. Can I get this done in a couple of days? And so what we found is that it wasn't, we turned it into a game. It's like, okay. And we quoted we quoted a total number, but we used an internal number of sell price per hour. So we started at, say, 150, and then we sold the job, and then they came back and, well, let's just bump that up a little bit and see if they'll go for it. And so it became this game to see how high we could go. And then we finally figured out with certain customers there was always a limit to which they'll take, right? But then we found that then we stumbled into other niches like laminating, hot melt spray laminating, where there were no competitors, and we could be like sky high with that price, but they were willing to pay it because what they had could bear the weight of that. So it was, I find it a challenge, yet if you can find that idea of gamifying it in a way that makes it interesting and fun, that I think is the cool thing.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, you run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life up to this point, what advice would you give that younger version of you?
Network and relationships are by far the one thing I would, whether you're in a trade industry or within a hobby group, I'm guessing you and I are maybe in the same range of age. What we didn't have all that when we were growing up, so it had to be very local. But now I'm able to be part of groups of people all around the world, and I think that is so cool. And then just to have those interactions, like when you're able to go to an event and those people you've met online, you meet them face to face, and it's just like, oh, that's really redeeming. So networks, just and networks just to give, right? Just to show up and give, and without any thought of getting back.
Yeah.
Because it'll come back. You don't know when, but it'll come back.
Yep.
So
It's the way karma works. So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
you know, I hope uh, a caring, good, decent listener. Depends upon who you talk to. If you talk to my wife or not. The and then yeah, just one who gives, and just can support people in any way I can. So
Wonderful. Mike, if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about you, hire you, anything about your world, where can they go?
yeah, head over to primesellersolutions.com. Again, that's primesellersolutions, it's plural.com, and you can find my mug on the front page of there and connect with me there.
Right on. Well, Mike, I'm glad we connected. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.